Welcome to Kingship Land, an affirmational discussion for strategies and action to manifest and secure what we need in our lives. The greatest civilizations on earth reflected the line of fathers and sons who created, improved on, and preserved temples and infrastructure for thousands of years. Their work continues to inform the living, and we can take lessons from their legacy, building from the stone foundations that they left behind. In our review of the 25th dynasty, which is considered one of the golden ages of Nubian or Kush domination in the world, we have three key figures who emerge, which are Shabaka, Pianki, and Taharka, who were emperors, generational emperors who waged wars to reclaim their holy land. As we know, Kemet was the holy land of the African hemisphere along the Nile. We also, and just to give you a little background, Shabaka wrote the Shabaka Stone, which is translated text of the oldest story of Genesis in the world. So these brothers whose generational or intergenerational mission was to reclaim the Holy Land, to reclaim land, did so by strengthening their army. So we had discussed last week that strategies for land preservation were very, very important. And acquisition was on top of the list in terms of a strategy, how to acquire land. And of course, that is always considered an economic remedy. The reason why we have discussions about reparations and land and dividends. Was I talking to you about dividends? Someone was saying from now on, when they talk about reparations, we're going to talk about dividends, the interest that's due basically for the labor of our ancestors. And so the thought came, what are some good strategies that we could employ to acquire land? So we know, especially during the age of COVID, that we don't have, that a lot of people have resources. So we have a number of people, as we discussed last week, we have a number of people who have a number of acres. They have hundreds of acres, they have equipment, they have capital resources. However, in many instances, we find that though there are capital resources available, we don't have the human capital or the physical capital in order to excel in production of the goods and services that we need, such as food, if we take that as a key necessity for life. So
you were saying strategies for acquiring land. You said one was find people who have acres, and then did you have more? I maybe I missed that.
Yeah, I was saying that there were a lot of people who had acres. Okay. And so in order to maximize the availability of their assets, it was seen that one of our key strategies ought to be to find the human and physical capital that can help them to maximize that asset. So in other words, we have farmers. I know it's a complaint of many Black farmers, and this doesn't have to do with only Black farming. This has to do with all industries, whether, we have seasoned veterans who work in electricity, or they work in welding, or they work in, bricklaying, and they are not able to find young people who are willing to go into those trades. It's the same thing with agriculture. They just were not willing. They were their mindset or idea had to do with getting money, finding the cash. They're going to be a recording artist. They're going to be a basketball or sports figure. And overnight that has vanished. For many, it may come back, but in the meantime, that is a direction I think that we can move in as a. What are your thoughts?
I think that's excellent. Strategy to acquire land. One of them, like you said, find people who have acres. Number two is strategies is look for inheritance from within your own family, but that might be saying find people. And I don't have another strategy for acquiring, or unless you would do it cooperatively. Find people who you can go together with to acquire land that we don't know. I personally don't know anyone that has land. Maybe I've never asked people. Maybe not in my circle, and that may be something I need to expand my circle. And maybe it's more prominent.
That's the thing. There are people who have land don't typically make that information available. Often because just for protection of personal assets, they don't need to flaunt particular information. It's what I've discovered, especially with working with business owners. They may have gotten $1 million contract, and you ask them, how much was a $1 million contract, and they won't say. They just won't advertise.
They just won't say it.
They just won't tell you. It's just not something that they want to boast about. Same thing. They don't want to boast. I've got 1,000 acres. I've got water, or well water on my land.
Right.
That's just an excuse for people to go and challenge them for it. However, again, if there are people who have land sitting fallow, so there are a couple of organizations that in other states that make that connection between people who have land and people who don't, so people who are seeking it to lease it. And so my interest is to perhaps, and this is one of the things that I was thinking to do as, that kind of came out of last week's conversation in terms of focusing more on something that's more definitive, action oriented, is to find youth that will be able to work as a labor and human force on land that may be available that's just sitting. So it would be a means of training. So we have green soldiers and people who do that. But if they're not, they do it. However, we need to expand it.
Okay.
We need to expand it. We need to continue that environmental education and to connect those dots so that our community is more secure. Because when you think about it, there are four basic economic resources: human capital, physical capital, technical capital, which includes capital resources, and then entrepreneurial. And historically, it has been human and physical capital that has moved economic and social development through time. That's how America came to be on, with the human capital of Africans.
I like that point. Good point.
So,
Professor.
So thank you so very much for your awesome listening conversation. As a people, the conversations will have been very good.
Was that the first webinar or podcast you did last week? Okay, that was good. No, it was really good. I've been on some, and some I was like, oh, I'm not going to go on it, but I like them when they're short. They get to the point, say what you want, and come up with ideas. And come up with it. Talk solutions and carry on. Because I always say, if I want to hear people talk, I can cut on talk radio. The Carl Nelson show or something else. That you hear either other people talk. But no, that's very good. Of strategizing to find people and acquire land. I have to really expand my circle. I really do. And that's one of the ways. Because it's not coming from family. I don't feel, at least in mine, I feel like in George, he's not on the line to validate it. Maybe he got together with his siblings. I'd like to find out a little bit more.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it was. I think it was that his and I. Really should hear from the horse's mouth. But I believe his wife had roots here, and so they were able to move forward with. I don't know if they identified property that was formerly theirs, but I know it wasn't, to my knowledge,
mm,
mother, like a whole, mother, father, sibling kind of dynamic. It was a husband and wife dynamic, I believe.
okay.
Um, and that's typically how it happens if it's not passed down. And most of the people that I know who are in farming, or the stories that I've heard about people who are in farming, or the people who acquired land, they were either husband and wife, or it passed down to one or the other.
Okay.
And so they've been able to manifest through having that accessible, whether they bought it or not. The fact it was accessible to them to buy.
Right. That's a good point. That is
Mm-hmm.
accessible, and that's what I need to find out. Okay, what's accessible in my reach? Not going to be in my immediate family because I can't see partnering with any of them, and even my own spouse. Unless it's a very good deal, I don't. He's not on the same
Mm-hmm.
sort of economic growth that I'm on.
Mm-hmm. And
Um,
that's common within family, within between spouses, within families. I used to do a lot of advising on property, land rights, estate planning,
mhm,
and I used to think that my family situation was unique, except I have talked to a lot of people and talked to a lot of attorneys who also say that even within their own family. So here they are, land attorneys with
mm,
all of this institutional knowledge as well, and their own families still don't trust them.
wow.
And so we have not only trust them, but it's just if you listen to any podcast about property preservation or passing out land, it's the same story over and over. You have some family members who get it, but the majority that don't. And so it's a matter of preserving what's had, and often people just don't make the connection to, or they, like there's just not that big network to pass it down to somebody, like you said,
Right,
I don't know anybody. You know what I'm saying? Who could I pass it down to? I'm trying to sell it. I don't know anybody to sell it to. I'm gonna pass away soon. I don't know who to give it to. You know what I mean? If it goes to family, because it's gonna go to family. And then what is family gonna do with it? Oftentimes family's gonna sell it for a new car.
right. Because we as people haven't been trained. I can say if we gave my siblings or others, I can even say cousins or so, someone said, "Oh, we got some 8 acres out in so and so county." The first thing they might want to do is sell it. They
Of
wouldn't
course.
think about investing any capital to make this property operative. You
Or
know.
they may want to have, I've heard story over story after story again of people who had it. They
Hmm.
wanted to invest capital. They wanted to invest in it. However, they didn't have the capital themselves. So they
Mm.
had to wind up selling it.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so again, this is opportunities where, we, like I said, the recipe just wasn't right before.
Right.
Maybe right now to move in these directions where you have programs for young people to
Right.
invest their labor, because oftentimes we think of capital as money. So everybody is, driven by money. I need to have money in order to do anything. But people have a lot of time on their hands right now, and that is also a form of capital.
That's a good point. Yes. People have a lot of time, a lot more time than they ever had.
Mhm. Mhm.
And talked about that last week of what are you doing with that time? Have you? are you better off now than you were in March? And most people I know have said yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I don't know any one person who's lost their job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Yep.
even with the job, well, yeah, we're getting your unemployment.
Thank you so very much for your comments today, for your joining us on this call. Did you have any closing thoughts that you wanted to share?
No, I didn't. That was very good. I just want to share with the group. Um, I have this book that I picked up. Not sure if you ever read it yet. Black Skin, White Mask by
Oh,
Frantz Fanon.
yes.
Got it got it about 3 weeks ago.
Mm.
And I've in the last, I'm gonna say in the last 2 3 weeks, I've heard Frantz Fanon's name mentioned 2 or 3 times, just in a general referring what he says. So I said today I was going to start reading his work and his studies, and really just see how we could how I could better myself.
Well, that's ironic that you said that because the third person that I had invited, who may still join, we worked on a paper having to do with Frantz Fanon,
Wow.
Kwame Nkrumah, and Abril Cabral. And I actually wanted to bring up Frantz Fanon today, or those three very distinguished African leaders, because they were instrumental in redevelopment and reshaping much of Africa. Frantz Fanon, of course, for his intellectual genius, and Abril Cabral being a revolutionary, and we know Nkrumah was the president. But one of the things that impressed me about those fellows was their focus on agriculture as a means for national development.
Mm.
And it was consistent across the board. Even for Nkrumah, for example, some of his very first key projects for nation building had to do with agriculture.
Mm.
There were a number of things that I got from Frantz Fanon, because of course, he was one who very much promoted land. In a book that he wrote, much about the Frantz Fanon book. So you said you just started reading it?
Right. And you, when you said something about incorporating your culture with everything you do and practices, I thought about our university this year for the first time in like our business meetings or through HR. They really made it a point to make sure that there was vegetarian food, there was something for Jewish people. There was people for Muslim. You had music was incorporated. So, and basically they were saying, which I took it, when I went out and got like decorations, I needed to make sure there was nothing associated with Christmas. Like nothing. I mean, no trees, candy canes. I did like green and red, or I did snowflakes. And I told everybody, if you're going to bring something, please bring it in on a non-traditional platter to not offend anyone in our department. But it took me saying that twice for them to really understand this is what I meant. Even when I had to go get napkins, I had to search for something like poinsettias. But see that, so therefore, even though we don't have Muslims, but like I keep saying, I celebrate Kwanzaa. I'm not offended by a Christmas tree. I don't know why Jewish people should be offended by a Christmas tree either. But my boss really thinks once I went out and bought some decoration for the museum, just a little something in the holiday. And she's like, "Oh, we have a lot of high income donors that are really part of this museum, and they would be offended." And I was like, "Offended?" I said, "Why would they be offended?" "Oh, because they don't celebrate." I said, "Well, I don't celebrate Christmas either, and I'm not offended." But they're right. It's
Well,
privilege.
it's called cultural tolerance.
Right.
But if you recall, the origins of the Christmas tree had to do with cultural intolerance.
Right.
So that's how we got from honoring the evergreen tree, which was the origin, which is how Christianity basically stamped it out.
Mm-hmm.
and Jewish reference to that time frame as well. So
Right.
that's where the sensitivity comes in. But as you said, in this day and age.
Right. In this day and age, but that's constantly, and I even bring up now when they say something, I said, does that include diversity or inclusion? I use their words. And they stop and they think, like, does that include a diverse audience? Does that include, reaching our diversity goal? And I just like leave it like that, like, and make them when they go back to their little thing, like, oh, we're not reaching our audience. We're reaching the same old white people that we always reach.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
in a way, I'm not saying that Black Lives Matter is dead, but it don't have the same hype as it had in June.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's the media. I don't know what that is of keeping our culture alive.
Well,
Um,
yeah, that's the question. There was a question on Facebook today. Why, you know, is Black Lives Matter a Black movement? Was the essence of the question. Because you see, like for example, in Portland, you saw a majority white crowd
right,
that was asking that Black Lives Matter. Same thing in Richmond. We have majority white crowds that are protesting and marching in the streets. So where are the Black people in this Black Lives Matter protest? And where are we? Why are we not? Why are we not leading? Why are we not participating in large numbers?
right. And from what I heard in some groups, there's still people out there protesting. I just don't know. I've known there've been no protesting in Greensboro lately. Hasn't been a topic of anything. So I'm wondering, like, where did it go to? Where did it go to? And we can't. Well, you and I, we're older. We can't let this die. I mean, like, this is crazy. I mean,
The
but
media drives a lot. So until people stop, until people draw from the media,
right.
we'll be back to watching football and basketball again this season.
It's the media, and we've been awoke for a long time, so we know the deal. But it's other people who don't know, and then still have to go into their offices, and they just go back to hunky dory. I was like, I've always been awoke, but now since George Floyd, there's a lot more stuff I just look at and go, that's just privilege, and I'm not gonna let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
I could like say it now mentally and also say it verbally
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
people in my department. I said, "Oh, that's a privileged status,"
Mm-hmm.
and they know exactly what I'm. I don't have to use the word white privilege because I'm working with all whites. I don't want to. If I say that too much,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
might need to stay there any longer. Because it's not getting. I mean, working around white people is not getting better. It's just it's not, and we need to work for ourselves. I
Yeah,
mean,
we really need to work for ourselves where there has been, not only housing has been gentrified, but the job market has been gentrified. That's the point.
mm-hmm,
And so, again, wealth and capital is being maintained and shifted to the next generation of other people, and we really have to make sure that our own kin
mm-hmm,
uh, is able to leverage a platform for themselves.
mm-hmm. Right. No, that's true. But that's it. That's my closing remarks.
Well, thank you so much again for your time. So we're gonna. I said last time we were gonna do the bell to close it out on a meditation for enhanced kingship
Okay.
and acquisition of land, and we're going to add um, elevating the African workforce in green industries for agriculture, etc.
Okay. What I say?
Ashe. Thanks and
Right.
praise. One love.